this country is at war with Germany.
We had to do a job, and we did the job, and that was it.
The men had to go and fight, and the women had to take their place.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the Great Crusade.
Hello and welcome back to the Foxhole. In the Foxhole this week, we are carrying on our Band of Brothers series. So we start with our first episode in the series, covering the first episode of Band of Brothers. So if you haven't seen that already, go back and listen to that so you're up to date. But chances are, if you listen to this podcast, you've probably watched the series before, I'm guessing. So this week, we're diving into episode 2, which is A Day of Days. And where does it rank in your rankings, Katie, in terms of like Band of Brothers? Is it up there as one of your favourites, or is it kind of lower down?
I think it's up there because you see the chaos of the jump, and it sort of quietens down a bit when they're trying to find everybody, and then it ramps up back again with the Breakwater Manor. So yeah, it's definitely up there. One of the better episodes, I think. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you've summed it up really well there. Yeah, I think it's a really good combination of, obviously, it kind of carries straight on from the end of episode 1, where you see the C-47s take off. So you kind of straight into it. And yeah, I think it's one of my favorites. Just because, like you said, it's a good mix of showing D-Day from the paratrooper perspective, which if you think in time, this came out early 2000s. Up until this point, there wasn't anything like Band of Brothers that had come out before, where it shows everything from the training to the jumps, into D-Day and how well it was done. So yeah, there's so much that happens in this episode, even though it's still the same length as all the others. It's when you look back and you go watch it, it's crazy how much happens in this one episode. I always look back. I always look forward to going back and rewatching this episode. Yeah.
So it shows a lot of bit of their kit to start with. So obviously, it starts off on the plane. You can see one of the guys fidgeting with the clicker. So for those that don't know, all the paratroopers were given. It was actually a toy, a cricket toy, and you literally just pressed it and it clicked. And the idea of this was so you could work out friend from foe. So you'd click it once, and then whoever's on the other side of the brick wall or the hedge or whatever would click twice to answer, and it's friendly. They did have another way of doing it with words. So if you lost your clicker, your cricket clicker, whatever you want to call it, was it flash to be replied by thunder?
Yes, yeah. So this was the idea that the Germans couldn't pronounce flash and thunder. You could tell the difference between an American accent and a German accent, which it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? When you think about it, because at this point as well, you've got to think there's very slim chance of any Germans before the war having gone to America, to pick up any kind of the lingo and how the words work and how they're spoken in America. So the world was very divided back then, I think. So it kind of makes sense why they came up with that idea.
You then see the planes flying through all the flak. You see a plane actually shot down, which could be Meehan's plane. And there were a few planes shot down, but from the Band of Brothers 101st Airborne point of view, Meehan's plane did crash and everybody on board was killed. So that might well have been his plane that they showed crashing.
Yeah. So I say very unfortunate, and that led to, as you see kind of later in the episode, Dick Winter's taking charge of Easy Company because of the chaos after the jump. They don't know if Meehan's just lost, or they don't know that his plane's gone down yet. And if you ever get the chance to go to Normandy, you can visit the D-Day experience, and you can see relics from that plane's crash. And then in Normandy, there is a memorial, a really nice memorial to the location of the plane crash as well, which would highly recommend going to visiting and paying your respects.
Yes, I second that. A lot of the pilots took evasive action from the flak and therefore misdropped the paratroopers. They wanted to get home themselves, so they were dropping either paras too high, too low, completely off target, which then meant everybody had to find each other and some were miles away from where they needed to be. They dropped with equipment, so they had like leg bags and bits and pieces as well. So in theory, they should have dropped with everything they needed to get the job done.
Yeah.
But whether they landed with all the stuff they needed to get the job done was another question.
Absolutely. Which actually, I don't know if you watched it. John from World War II Wayfinder has done a couple of videos recently about that leg bag, and he shows a clip from this episode of Band of Brothers I didn't notice before, and he slowed it down where you see Winters come out and you see the leg bag kind of detach. Obviously, it happened super quick in the program, so him slowing it down was the only way. And you kind of watch and you go, "Oh my god, yeah!" And this is 20 years after the program has come out, and still watching it and going, "Oh my god, yeah, that's really detailed." But yes, that was the idea behind the paratroopers, wasn't it? That they were ready to fight as soon as they landed because they're behind enemy lines. They already had all this equipment, and then this leg bag that was a British idea was added on kind of last minute. And because it being a British idea, the American paratroopers didn't really know necessarily how to use it and how it would fit with their kit. But the misdrops are kind of very famous now, within the Second World War story and the story of D-Day. But I suppose if you're a fit 20-something, teenager, 20-something-year-old paratrooper, covering a couple of miles in a couple of hours is, well, I say easy, but, in practice it's easy, but, in enemy territory it might not be so easy. But, it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Not dramatic. Yeah, dramatic start to the episode for sure.
Yes. We hear the St. Mary Glee's church bells ringing, basically signifying that the Allies have well and truly arrived. That must have been terrifying, eerie. I wouldn't have thought the bells would have rung on a normal day.
No.
Obviously, the bells, because obviously all the church bells and everything over here in England certainly stopped ringing throughout the war. So I'm presuming that was probably the same over in France. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I imagine, yeah.
But yeah, the church bells rang to give the Germans a bit of notice that you've got some people dropping on your head, boys. We then meet Winters again with a couple of the others. I thought it was quite interesting. They had a map and a compass and a torch, and they went undercover to not draw attention to themselves. So another little detail there. They were trying to figure out where they were, where everybody else was, and how to regroup.
Yeah. I think it's testament to their training that even though they know that they're off course, when Winters lands and he comes across Private Hall, which is also one of my favorite lines in the entire show, where Winters says, "We're not lost, Private, we're in Normandy." And then with the map scene that you're describing, it's a testament to their training that they know things have gone wrong, but they've still got an objective to do. So they're going to make the best of the situation, really. And like you say, get under a raincoat, because you don't want to be there with a torch and a map, because if there's any Germans lurking around, they're going to go, well, they're clearly not, allies of mine. So they're up to no good. So yeah, you want to keep a low profile.
Yep. And ambushing a horse-drawn cart is not keeping a low profile. Let's face it.
Yeah, not really. But I suppose it's a catch-22, isn't it? Do you let it go by for them, German soldiers, to then possibly kill some of your comrades or cause havoc, elsewhere? But yeah, it is a tricky situation. Yeah.
Yeah, there is some inaccuracies, I think, to do with that horse-drawn cart. So we see Bill Garnier open fire because previously we'd found out he'd lost his brother. was killed by the Germans. So he wanted a little bit of revenge. But when he dropped, he'd also lost his weapon. So he couldn't fire upon these Germans that he's found.
Yeah.
Winter had also lost his weapon, but he got a weapon from this ambush, which was actually an M1 Garand that the Germans had previously captured.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Apparently.
So that is a bit of a kind of two inaccuracies, really, because if I'm not mistaken, where Winters loses his weapon and then Lipton hands him a weapon and he goes, "Here you go, sir, Kraut weapon for you," implying that it's a what's the German gun? K98. That's the one, yeah. But yeah, maybe I don't know. Yeah, that M1 Grand kind of tracks, yeah.
We then cut to them walking through a field when you see dead parrots caught up in the trees. A lot of them were actually used as target practice by the Germans.
Yeah, it's the nasty side. Well, war's always nasty, but that's a particularly nasty element. Because the paratroopers are jumping at night, so obviously if there's power lines that they can't see in amongst trees, things like that were going to happen. And then, if the Germans come across them, obviously they're maybe not going to oblige by the Geneva Convention, to the letter, I suppose. So, yeah.
With everybody being dropped here, there, and everywhere, there's a mass regrouping of the paras in a manor house, which was a short distance behind the beachhead. We then meet Ronald Spears from Dog Company, who didn't smoke, but he lit a German cigarette just before shooting them, which is another controversial point around Spears about whether he did or didn't, or anything.
I still think today I don't know that anybody truly knows, because of I know Winters has tried to get it out of him in the past, and there's been books written about him, but I don't think anyone can categorically say yes or no at this point, and even when he was alive, nobody could get it out of him. So it was kind of that myth, wasn't it, around it, that kind of helped him in a weird way, helped his kind of reputation and his kind of how he led men, and you can kind of understand. I say kind of understand. You've got to remember that not everybody on the Allies side was just joining up to do a job. There will have been people that joined up with very strong views and opinions, and they wanted to get over there to cause harm and get revenge for a lost family member or whatever. So you can kind of believe stories like this would happen.
I did read Spears did kill prisoners, but not at that moment in the episode. So when everybody regroups, they're talking about the Breakout Manor. So there's a series of, is it 4 guns basically in the corner of this field?
Yeah.
And they had to go and take them out because they were firing upon the exit to Utah Beach.
Yeah.
So they had to be taken out so everybody landing on Utah Beach could basically get off the beach and get to safety. So this was a very condensed battle. Apparently the actual battle happened for about 3 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for a 3-hour-long episode of Band of Brothers, but
yeah, I mean, you both. I think there's plenty of us out there that would watch that extended director's cut. The Breakout Manor has gone down in history, and I think it's probably the standout bit from this episode, or the standout action from this episode. And having both of us have been to Breakout Manor, where there's now a memorial, and you can actually, looking down the road, you can see the farmhouse where they all assemble to that scene where the paratrooper is trying to find the leader of Easy, and Winters is talking to Compton, and then they go in and Stray is talking them through, and then Winters relays that message to the men. That all happened in that farmhouse, which is literally, maybe a couple hundred yards from where the Breakout Manor memorial is. And yeah, it's an amazing and textbook, as it says at the end of the episode, that was in the early 2000s, was still taught at West Point, the US Academy. And you can see why, because even though in the show it's condensed, it's kind of the perfect fire and maneuver, and just take one thing at a time. Don't try and take them all on at once. And I think it's the first success of Easy Company in the war, really, because it's their first engagement. We don't realize this. They've literally landed, they've just got themselves together, and then boom, Break All Manor is their first major action.
Yep, and we see the commitment from the paratroopers, because as one of them was wounded in the battle, and you see him apologising for being wounded. It's like, you can't help it.
Yeah, it's Popeye Win, wasn't it? Yeah. And he's like, I'm sorry, sir, I messed up. And then he's saying to Cox, he's like, where were you shot? He's like, my ass. And he just goes, your ass. That's bad that I know that off by heart, and that I know the lines. But hey, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. We then see Malarkey looking for a Luger. The Lugers were German hand rifles?
Pistols.
Pistols, that's the word. And very sought out after as war trophies.
Yeah.
And Malarkey went out under fire.
Yeah, why? Why would you do that? Like, it doesn't matter how bad you want a Luger. I'd be like, nope, I'm staying in this slit trench. I'm staying in cover, and I'm just getting the mission done, because then I want to get back. Because but I suppose from his point of view, he doesn't know how long his war's going to last. So is he? I'm near some fallen Germans, so I've got to try and take this opportunity while I can, sort of thing. But still crazy. Yeah.
There was an American magazine, Stars and Stripes. They actually discouraged the GIs from doing it and trophy hunted, so they don't put themselves or anybody else in harm's way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Crazy that they had to put that out, but...
We then see Para talking to Lipton, asking for directions, and he lifts his head up and he gets shot.
Yeah. I think that's... Even though it's only a short scene, it kind of solidifies how dangerous just being in Normandy to begin with is, because he literally just moves his head a few inches, and then clearly some German had his eyes open, and bang. And it's quite an impactful scene thinking about it now, actually. Yeah,
that did actually happen, but in slightly different circumstances.
Okay.
Not sure what, but this trooper did literally just lift his head up and get shot, but it wasn't quite asking Lipton for directions, I don't think.
Right, yeah.
Beers appears technically an hour and a half, 2 hours later into the battle. We see a grenade landed by his feet, and he kicked it away, and it went off a few feet away from him, and he saw the end of his boot smoking.
Yeah.
It went off that closely. So Breakout Manor, they clear all of that. Yeah, Winters realises the significance of D-Day and wrote down a lot of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because of that, we reckon that this series was made. So you had that first-hand account from Winters, basically all through D-Day and onwards, and that's a lot of research came from in the book and everything.
Yeah. It kind of makes sense, and I think we can be glad that there was people out there like Dick Winters, because obviously there will have been loads and loads of soldiers who kind of kept some sort of diary, whether they were allowed to or not. But I'm really glad that soldiers like that had the wherewithal to do that, because then people, like in the early 2000s, and now we can go back and we can read them, and we can get as much of a sense as what it was like back then as possible through their words. Because I think someone like Dick Winters, he comes across very reflective and, wanted to kind of understand things. He wasn't just a soldier that just followed orders. He thought a bit deeper than it all, and that came through with how he showed himself when he cared for his men, and he wanted them to survive and do well as well. So that makes sense, and I'm really grateful that he did that.
Yeah, we wouldn't have the understanding in movies and TV series that we have today, probably, if he didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So towards the end of the episode, we see Winter's looking over a burning city, and he gives a little speech of living peacefully. And after the war, that's exactly what he did.
Yes, yeah, he went back to. He was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and yeah, that's what he did. He said, we basically prayed to God. He was a very religious man. Prayed to God and said, if you get me through the rest of this war, I promise to go back and just find a quiet corner somewhere and live out his days, which is exactly what I did. And I think that's what we all kind of hope to do. I certainly sometimes find myself nowadays thinking, I think he had a point there, just living in nice and peaceful, quiet, and nobody bothering him. That sounds quite nice. That sounds really nice. But, from his perspective, you got to understand, that he was saying this, just after D-Day, so they haven't been through everything else yet. So you can kind of understand why, I'm guessing, as the war went on, he might have even cemented that idea even further that I can't wait to, I've just got to get through the war and then we can live in peace. And that didn't stop him from doing his job by any means. He didn't, kind of shirk responsibility or anything like that. He still got on with the job as did the rest of his men. But yeah, it's a really nice way to end the episode, I thought.
Yeah, so as you say, that ended the episode, and then we see, instead of the credits, a list of medals given to the men for Breakout Manor, isn't it? I think.
Pretty much, yeah. I think it's Breakout Manor and like actions on D-Day, I think is like lumped into it, I think, from what I can remember, yeah.
It was a relatively compact, but by other standards, quiet episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because they knew, how gargantuan D-Day was. They were like, oh my God, how do we tell this story of this day of days, as the episode is titled? How do we tell it? And I think, it obviously being about one unit, Easy Company, kind of made it a little bit easier for them. But yeah, like we said at the beginning, it's a nice kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not collection. A nice
roundup.
mix. Yeah, a nice roundup of like it includes battles, but then it also has the quiet moments. Where you see the soldiers having some downtime, and obviously Winter's kind of little speech at the end. So yeah, it's a really nice mix of an episode, and then kind of sets the scene, for the rest of the series, really. Because if you know, obviously, about World War II, that D-Day wasn't the end. They had way more to go. So it's kind of like a little bit of a breather to end the episode before the rest of the campaign carries on, really, and ramps up.
Well, that was a short and sweet episode for episode 2 of Band of Brothers. Join us shortly for episode 3 when we're off to Carentan. So hope you've all enjoyed it. Anything we've missed, do let us know. You can find us in all the usual places where you get your podcasts. Don't forget you can follow us on Instagram as well. And until then, we'll see you next week.